One of the few infantry units that can truly be called shock infantry, Bestigors here today, ready to contest against the Lizardmen. So let's go ahead and have a look at the build here. We've got Malagor the Dark Omen, 4 Bestigor herds, some Ungor spears up front, a couple of Minotaurs with shields, and some Razorgore herds as well, some Harpies to counter these Pterodons, of which there are 2, including the Pawhawk Sentinels there, another 2 over on the far side. For the Lizardmen, we've got Mazdamundi, very strong choice here. Solar Engine's also pretty solid. A mix of Saurus spears and regular Saurus, and some Javelin cohorts, just one. So, Bestigor, like I said, shock infantry. Basically, the reason you don't see very high charge on infantry is because it scales so crazy with their model count. Like these guys, for example, their 35 charge plus 40 weapon strength means they're hitting for 75 weapon strength on the charge. I'll remind you that that's like monstrous infantry level, just about like, I think Crypt Horrors have something like 80 weapon strength, so it's pretty insane. You also consider 40 melee attack with that Bestial Surge active, means they're hitting for 75 attack as well, and yeah, just an insane unit that can do a crazy amount of damage on the charge. They do have pretty low defense, 95 armor, best of the Beastmen infantry, but only 24 melee defense. 40 speed is also pretty good for a unit this heavily armored. Probably one of the better heavy units in terms of speed, but you can see one of them does get a little bit ransacked by Mazdamundi there, but here we get a nice clean charge into some Saurus. A little bit of skink javelin fire in the flank there, but these Saurus spears definitely get eaten up, and also side charge there now by some Razorgores, so pretty rough time. And the reason that you bring these guys specifically in this matchup is because they beat Saurus pretty decisively on the charge. Here you can see this unit of Saurus is fighting back okay. The Saurus have pretty good weapon strength. But the shock damage of the charge there from the Bestigor, definitely very good. They trade well against Temple Guards as well. Just in general, yeah, you can cycle charge them too, which is a little bit tricky to do sometimes, but given that they have 40 speed, they can, even against some other slower infantry. But here they get terrified away by Mazdamundi. That is one of their weaknesses. Obviously, as Beastmen, they have low leadership, no immune to psychology once that Bestial Surge fades. So, yeah, we're going to have some healing here on these Saurus, a little bit of apotheosis to try and help them sustain in this fight, but the Bestigor will come back from route and keep working that down there. And yeah, you can see as we check back in, this was basically a clean 1v1 engagement here, and the Bestigor winning out pretty decisively there. I mean, you would kind of expect that given the cost differential between the two units, but still, Saurus are decent infantry, all things considered. No question about that. The Saurus here on the flank getting rolled up there by the Minotaur support, so pretty good stuff. There's not a real heavy presence to threaten Malagor, as long as he stays away from Mazdamundi, which he's got a summon Cygor in here to act as a nice distraction. Bestigor also still fighting, supporting against the Saurus spears there. Minotaurs and some Razorgores also kind of providing some mass to pin in Mazdamundi here. So pretty good so far for the Beastmen. This is a matchup that historically is thought of as pretty tough. Any of the monster matchups are generally perceived as pretty tough for the Beastmen. Can definitely do some things though. Bestigor are a tool and it often gets overlooked in this matchup. Pretty underrated, to be honest, in a number of situations. Generally the focus for Beastmen is on their monsters like Spawn and Minotaurs and so on, but Bestigor, in certain matchups especially where they can get good trades, like this matchup against Saurus and Temple Guard, both very good trades. And they're also pretty good at supporting against the monsters, although they will get terrified as we saw. But Summon Cygor goes down. Mazdamundi's still got plenty of HP left, but his Saurus support's pretty much gone at this point. Over here, same thing, the Solar Engine inundated by Bestigor and Minotaurs. Bestigor will keep fighting. Their leadership is just good enough here to sustain. And looking pretty good so far. I mean, a lot of this is due to the balance power spike from the summons, but given that basically all the infantry are gone, there's still a handful of Saurus coming back there and here, and yeah, I think the drop rock's probably already been used at this point. Oh, nope, there it goes. Getting a nice contact there on some of the Bestigor, but there's still just so many left, considering, you know, the width of this build. And they're 4 great weapon units. A lot of great weapon units are tricky to use, I would say. They can sometimes run into some issues, but you really don't have any shielded option, right, for Bestigors. There's only the great weapon variant, really, kind of like with Black Orcs, and because they are more of a shock infantry role, they're not necessarily like your standard great weapon that just gives you the armor piercing benefit, right? Beastmen generally tend to be pretty good on the charge, but Bestigor especially with that massive weapon strength. We'll do some comparisons in the end there after this, but big thanks to Tesla for sending that one in up against Energized. Very good player. Overall, very fun battle. Nice to see Malagor shining there, but really the best score. 56, 39, 92, 49. Two of them got some XP Chevron action, so that's great. Minotaurs didn't do quite as many kills as I thought they would. I guess most of the time they're supporting against the monsters anyway. Same thing for the Razorgore herds, but the Bestigor definitely proving pretty effective there. 24 kills also for the Poison Hounds, chasing some stuff off. This is more or less a standard build from what you'd see from Lizardmen. I'm not the biggest fan of the Saurus Spears here. I think they'll do okay against the Spawn, but honestly the regular Saurus do pretty well against the Spawn as well, just because they have such high weapon strength. And generally, the Saurus Spears are not great against Beastmen infantry, but that's just personal preference. Yeah, so in terms of other units that can kind of be termed as this shock infantry, Forsaken's one, they're non-AP, but they definitely have high enough charge. Skaven, who are already up here, are probably the most directly comparable to Bestigor. They have their Plague Monk Sensor Bearers, right, which are, again, high charge, armor piercing, sort of in a similar cost bracket as well. 1050 for the Bestigor and 1050 for Sensor Bearers, so pretty much the same, right? Sensor Bearers do actually have slightly higher weapon strength and charge baseline, lower attack, and lower HP, but they do have more unit models, 15 more unit models. Physical resistance instead of armor, and I definitely would say the armor and the armor and extra HP of the Bestigor herd is a pretty good advantage. Bestial Surge, if we compare, I think it's more or less the same as Frenzy. Let's see, plus 8 melee attack, only plus 5 melee attack here actually. 8% charge bonus, which is, I believe, yeah, the charge bonus component is the same. So Bestigor will end up having slightly less charge and weapon strength. But yeah, the armor and the fact that they also have, obviously, Woodsmen, as they are Beastmen units, does help them operate in the forest a little bit more effectively. Not as big of an issue for infantry-type units, but still, it's a nice little extra to have. And yeah, they are also, I guess, slower baseline, but the Bestial Surge does also give speed as well. Skaven would be down normally from that base amount with the strength in numbers, so they are going to be slower to start, but then faster actually at the later part of the battle. But yeah, definitely I would say the extra armor does help the Bestigor in a number of situations. Good use cases, I would say, definitely against any faction which you think is going to potentially bring a lot of mid-tier kind of infantry. These guys will trade very well against the likes of Saurus. I don't remember exactly the interaction. I believe they beat most dwarf infantry if they get a good charge on them. Longbeards, it's been a while since I've tested that directly, but I'd imagine that we have a comparison here. Just think about like the charge values. Because the charge bonus is so high, as long as something doesn't have expert charge defense, like Ironbreakers, like if you just consider regular Longbeards have only charge defense against large. So, although they are considerably cheaper, you know, you'd expect the Bestigor to win, but given that, just the shock damage can be pretty real there, especially on a smaller map where you can't get lit up by artillery too much. Yeah, even against greenskins, potentially, if you can get a counter charge, Black Orcs is another unit that's potentially pretty comparable. Black Orcs, only 29 charge. They get charge bonus buffs from WoW, but they have higher weapon strength, just a tiny bit better all around, except obviously much slower. The speed is another thing that's hard to quantify for the Bestigor. It does allow them to actually cycle charge in some situations, again, against slower infantry, especially where, obviously, big, slow Black Orcs would not be able to. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think Black, because of the lack of immune to psychology and the lower leadership, the Bestigor, they can run into some issues where the Black Orcs will continue fighting, but utilizing that speed and charge bonus, definitely you can get some good value. And yeah, like I said, Lizardmen potentially there, even like maybe Dark Elves or High Elves. There's a number of matchups where if you just bring maybe one or even two to counter your opponent, if they are going to bring some good either mid-tier or just regardless what tier, just heavy infantry in general. Yeah, Bestigor is a pretty solid option, kind of convoluted, but hopefully that all makes sense. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, found this useful, informative, or otherwise entertaining. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you next time.